Hello and welcome to this video. Hopefully it's recording. My camera is doing something weird. This video is extra credit. And not only is it extra credit, meaning that it doesn't factor into your regular points, but it is also extra in the sense of you're not going to get tested on this. This is not required for your speech or anything like that. This is just next level stuff. Alright, and just like the first video, extra credit video I did was about public speaking and intercultural concepts and using it to break barriers, this one is about research and using argumentation to help your research. Okay? Before I begin, let's a reminder one of the required videos about choosing informative topics. In there I talked about Little Richard and the importance of Little Richard to modern music, and I said there's ways I can show that he's the most influential artist by showing quotes, who he influenced, and then who he influenced from there. And so there was a lot of different things I could have pointed out, and like samples and so forth. But I told you to take note of that because this will come up on this video. And what's going to come up is a simple idea that, how am I wrong? I know students love to jump at the fact that show their professors are wrong. Trust me, I was one of those people. Don't do that regularly. But the thing is, the reason why I point out is when I teach argumentation, I would ask my students, I would set them up like I did with you on the Little Richard spiel, and then I would say, hey, how am I wrong? How can you point out where I'm deficient or where I can be looking at other things as major influences? And so here's some of the things that students pointed out. I didn't go back far enough. Maybe there's artists that are older than Little Richard that are greater influence. And my second choice would have been Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson, bluesman Robert Johnson. If you ever heard about selling your soul to the devil for playing guitar, that originated with Robert Johnson. That's how good he was. But the reason why I mention him is because everything when it comes to the modern guitar, it's rooted back with Robert Johnson. John Lee Hooker is an example. Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra, not just about his music and his voice, but the idea of record sales and being a pop icon, that really blew up when it came to Frank Sinatra. And so there's other things students point out about people after Little Richard that were just game changers that completely changed everything. I always forget to look him up. But the grandfather of synchronized music, pretty much influence of modern, big, major, in the 80s, the 90s music, and then of course techno, rooted back to him. People I mentioned in that video, Jimi Hendrix, George Clinton, Elvis maybe. These are complete game changers when it comes to how music was done before them and then how music was done after them. And there's other things students pointed out, like why just musicians? What about people who created the industry or created major influences, like the person who created Motown? Huge influencer. Producers, industries. Rick Rubin, for example. Rick Rubin, Russell Simmons, rock, hip-hop, and so forth. Dre, Dr. Dre. I'm a big fan of Dr. Dre, so I don't talk about him like I'm his friend. Hey, Dre. Anyways, but you understand. It is these types of things students point out. And the big one, because I set it up that way, because I purposely do it this way, is students point out that all my examples are men. Where are the women? And so Billie Holiday comes straight into my mind all the time. Ella Fitzgerald, Etta James, my favorite female singer. Stevie Nicks, who just recently had another hit from Fleetwood Mac with Dreams because of that TikTok video. Chrissy Hines. There's so many others that are just major influences on the industry, not just for female singers, but the industry itself. So it's important to note where you might be wrong on issues because it sets you up to look at things that you might not be thinking about when it comes to your research and so forth. Before I got into teaching and when I worked in the politics, I was something that you call an opposition researcher. Now, opposition researcher is most commonly associated with looking up people's past and possible scandals and so forth. I did that. And about looking up how they're campaigning and so forth, which was easy for me because I looked like the opposition. But the thing is, opposition research for me, my favorite part of it, and that's stuff I still do to this day, is where they might attack you, where they might come from, what they might say in debate, how to debate them. That's my favorite part of opposition research, doing that kind of thought process to what they might do in the media and stuff like that, where they might attack you. By the way, my political stuff, there's some of it here, my ceramic examples. Be careful. From my White House travel office, working with them, I kept this one because it's my hometown. But yeah, presidential visit. But there's a couple other stuff here too. But the thing is, when it comes to the opposition research, predicting what they were doing, one of the nicknames I got from politics is the devil, because we were watching a debate with the candidate we were working with, and I kept predicting what the opponent would say before they even said it. I would answer their question before they started saying it. And a very Catholic campaign person looked over at me and said, "You are the devil." That's where that comes from. And it's stuff I'm about to teach you or talk to you about that gets you prepped for that kind of thinking. Not devilish thinking, but you understand, being able to predict. Alright, so the way these work is just like last time. You pause the video, answer the question, and then you come back to the video, keep watching, pause it, answer the question, and so forth. This one's a little bit different than last time. What you need to do is, I'm not going to give you the answers or what I would say until you answer. Besides the fact that you can't, just a reminder, you need to put all your answers into one post. Don't do multiple posts, just one post with all your answers. So if you want to write it in a doc or whatever and then come back to it and type it in later, you can do that, or copy and paste it into the thread. But what you need to do is, I'm going to set up the question, you're going to pause it, and then you're going to go to it. And then I'm going to explain the question a little bit more. But I just want that initial response from you. And there's usually 3 questions, but there's 4 because the first question is real easy. And the first question is this. Think about your informative topic. Think about your persuasive topic. Where would the opposition to what you, or something you're very interested in, where would the opposition come from? Go ahead and pause it before I give my answer. Where would the opposition come from for what you're informative, persuasive? Choose one topic, because that topic is going to be discussed throughout the entire. You're going to use that topic for the entire video. So where would your opposition come from? Pause it now. Alright. So what is the answer? The answer is where everything. So for example, if you're doing some fun topic like how to bake a cake, where would the opposition come from baking a cake? It would come from people who think cakes are unhealthy. Or it might come from people who think cheesecake or pie or ice cream is better than cake. Or that cake is too rich or something like that. Or making cakes has a negative environmental. There's so many different ways that people are going to pose, even the simplest subject. So even if you think, oh, my love of soccer can't be opposed. Yeah, people say soccer is not the best sport. Or that you shouldn't like sports, period. Or there's better things to do with your time. Or that sports is outdated and it's all about virtual reality or something like that. That is opposition. So when I worked in politics, I'm very open. Even though I'm supportive of all viewpoints, you know, I know where I'm from. I'm a Democrat, and that's who I worked for. I worked for Democrats. And so the thing is, I know where my opposition came from. Just like this last presidential election. If you voted for Biden, your opposition was Trump. If you voted for Trump, your opposition was Biden. This is where the idea of who my opposition comes into play. Simple answer. That goes into the second question. The second question is, how can that opposition... By the way, if you thought your opposition... You don't change your answer, but you can think differently. If you thought, oh, I didn't think about this possibility, you can start using that. So the next question is, how would they attack you? And what I mean by attack is, like in a debate, how would they oppose you? In argumentation classes, we debate. By the way, when I teach it, the debate is the last thing we do. But a debate is when you go back and forth. How would they debate you? What would the argument come from? When it comes to opposition, how would they argue with you? So go ahead and pause the video and come up with some ideas. This one, like 2 to 3 sentences. 2 or 3 sentences on how would they debate you? How would they argue? How would they oppose you? How would they attack what you believe in? And then I'll cover possible answers or how to answer that. Alright, so when I worked in politics and I had to come up with how they attack, I would think about how would they come at my candidates or how they would come at me, because I would debate. Yeah, I'm one of the only argumentation professors who actually debated professionally outside of forensics. I'm just tooting my own horn. But the thing is, how would they come at me? How would they come at me? And so I would, when as a Democrat, we would have to worry about, in the Central Valley, we had to worry about environmentalism, because in the Central Valley, farming and farms are very important. Agriculture is very important. So they would attack my candidates by saying that they will let environmentalists run over our main industry in the Central Valley, which is agriculture. Or they talk about taxes, we tax too much, or things like that. These are ways that they would attack my candidates or me in debates. One of the ways they would attack me, and it would always fail in the debate, is that I was weak on military issues. And especially when I was younger, I would turn to them and go, well, oh, you can't really see it. Oh, here you go. Well, I served in the Marine Corps, and I had this short hair and everything. In fact, there was a good portion of my early political time I was in the Marine Reserves, and so that would always throw them off. But I knew those attacks were coming. I was prepared for them because I thought about all the possible opposition where they might come at you. So you don't change your answers. It's good to just flesh out and bring out ideas and where your opposition might come from. It goes into the next question, the third question, which is, how would you attack them? 2 to 3 sentences. How would you know who your opposition is, how would you attack them? What flaws would you point out? What ways would you point out that they might be wrong, or so forth? And try to think of unconventional ways to attack them, because unconventional attacks throws people off all the time. So when argumentation, when you debate, setting up your opposition, something I was always good at, is a great way to control the argument. And in this case, what you need to do to research. Because you have to be prepared for that, so you have to research it. I gotta talk more about research. I'm gonna pause it. And we're back. Alright, so the thing about researching and argumentation and preparing for it is, what do you look up? For example, so I was in forensics and I mostly did parliamentary debate. But my partner, one time we were like, why don't we do a twofer? Why don't we do parliamentary and this thing called CETA, which is you walk around with this tub of papers and you have to present evidence, and you present these papers. And one of the things for the CETA debate we did was we had access to LexisNexis for lawyers. That is so good. I miss it so much. But anyway, we have access to it. And fun fact about LexisNexis lawyers, it's the only way that you can find all my political work. Anyways, so we had access to this, and we found an article about pirates in the waters around Thailand. No one was prepared for pirates of Thailand. It worked like a charm and threw everyone off. And that is something you can do when it comes to good things. So for example, I'm a supporter, and by the way, I'm not advocating. Remember what I said about opinion. When I talk about my opinion, is not to advocate for it, but to give you an example of it. When I talk about universal health care, and I'm a big supporter of government-run health care, like they have in Europe. I think the German system would probably work best here, but the best system would be the British or France. But if we were lucky. But the Canadian or German system would probably be the one that we would be able to adapt. Do I talk about rights and it being a human right and so forth? No, I talk about the fact that we need to be competitive. And I bring facts and figures about GDP in these places and how much these other countries with universal health care have a better work base and better working environment and stuff like that. I talk about economic competition when I advocate for that. And then I put my opponents who are advocating for our private insurance off because they're expecting me to talk about rights. And they'll talk about, oh, that's going to cost money, when in reality, they're not expecting me to make an economic argument about being competitive in a global market. See how that works? When you come up with ways to attack your opposition, and especially when it's unconventional, like they're not expecting it. It has to be reasonable, it has to be sound, and you can do that by researching and seeing where you can find things that support you. But by doing that, you find different ways to attack your opposition, and by doing so, you find different ways to attack. Research, and that leads to the final thing. The whole point of this process, finding your opposition, how they might attack you, how you might attack them, leads to the most important part of this in argumentation and research is how do you research, where do you go from? Finding out your weakness is an important part of informative and persuasion about public speaking in general. Not just argumentation, but in overall everyday speech. Finding out what deficiencies you have, not only for public speaking, but also writing papers, is the best way to find where you need to research. If you know your weaknesses, or your weaknesses, your opponent's weaknesses, you can shore up the parts in your speech that are important. So this one's a little bit different. I'm giving you the kind of answer before the question, but just think about it. Think about everything you just did, about where they might attack you, where you might attack them. How can knowing this stuff, what things will you look up in research to shore up those deficiencies or exploit the deficiencies of your possible opposition? So 2 to 3 sentences like the other one. This one, at least 3 sentences. Think of 3 sentences that will explain how you would look up, what you would look up, what you would look up, and help you research for that. Not a paragraph, just 3 quick sentences. What will you do to shore up deficiencies that you brought forward in this process? Not just for yourself, but your possible opposition as well. What would you research? That's the point of this. Argumentation is an important process. Not even if you're not arguing. If you're just writing a paper or giving a speech about a subject, knowing where you are deficient, knowing your research weaknesses, and then researching to shore up, to fill in the holes, will help you in your overall persuasion or informative general purpose, or specific purpose in your thesis. All right? Those are the 4 questions. Put it down as explained. Good luck. Get those 5 points.